Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
James sent me notes, and Steve, check out this story. And we talked recently about our data, people who collect data about us, what they do with the data, who they sell it to, what they do with the money they make off that, and how they don't give that money to us, and about how it's just a gigantic invasion of our privacy. But here's an interesting story from thehill.com. Nebraska sues General Motors and OnStar over alleged sale of driver data recorded by Vehicle Tech. Will Day and Jeremy Tanner wrote the story. And the Nebraska AG's office said it's filed a lawsuit against GM and OnStar for allegedly collecting, processing, and selling sensitive driving data from Nebraskans without their knowledge or consent. As you can imagine, it ain't just Nebraska, okay? This is happening everywhere, allegedly. State AG accuses GM and OnStar of installing telematic systems in their vehicles that collect data, including your speed, your seatbelt usage, your driving habits, and your location. And then, of course, that data, they say, was then sold to third-party data brokers who used it to create driving scores for individual drivers. Those scores were then sold to insurance companies who used them to raise rates, deny coverage, or cancel policies, according to the lawsuit. Nebraska drivers were never informed that their data was being collected or used against them. And here's the thing. The fact that they collect it about you and sell it, to me, is wrong. Why don't I get a slice of that? If you're selling data about me, shouldn't I get a slice? But number two, shouldn't I have to consent? Shouldn't they have to ask me, say, is it okay if we sell your data? It seems to me it ought to be. But of course, there's so much money to be made by doing this that they'll never pass such a law. But among the key allegations in the litigation are that GM deceived consumers at the point of sale by misrepresenting the nature and scope of the OnStar connected services. I once had a vehicle that had OnStar on it, and it was pitched to me as, if you ever need help, press this button and you can speak to somebody. I was not told, and we're gathering data about you 24/7, and we're going to sell that data to somebody. I would have said, I don't think I like that idea. Consumers are often misled into believing that enrollment in OnStar is mandatory to access basic safety features. GM failed to adequately disclose that enrollment in its mobile apps or connected vehicle services would allow the company to collect and sell all the personal data. And also they alleged that dealership employees were incentivized to enroll customers without proper disclosure and in some cases without obtaining any consent. So the AG says Nebraskans deserve to work with companies that are truthful and honest about what they're doing. This is not what happened here. We filed this lawsuit because one large company decided that it wouldn't honestly tell Nebraskans that their data was going to be used to impact their insurance rates. This is wrong. Our office will hold companies that mislead Nebraskans accountable, no matter how large. So when asked for comment on the litigation, General Motors told Nexstar's KSNW, we remain committed to protecting consumers' privacy and will conduct a review of the complaint. Nebraska is seeking civil penalties, restitution, and an injunction to keep GM and OnStar from doing this in the future. Now, of course, committed to protecting consumers' privacy, except that I suspect that these allegations are true. That is that GM gathers the data and then sells it. How is that protecting your privacy? And by the way, we've talked before about how some people collect data and claim that it's been anonymized, meaning that we've tracked how many cars have gone through this intersection, but we didn't actually attach names to any of those cars, just to measure traffic. Okay, that's a little less intrusive, but obviously, if an insurance company can say, we got information about you from OnStar, well, that's not anonymized, is it? GM is not the only company accused of misusing telematics programs. An investigation by the New York Times back in 2024 found instances of drivers who had not knowingly opted into a telematics program being tracked. Data recorded without their consent was sold to third parties, sometimes resulting in a spike in insurance premiums, according to the Times. And so I know that many of you know this. We talked about some of this before. There are a boatload of apps on your phone, and you can go to the various app stores and get more, okay? When somebody gives you an app and goes, here's an app for free. This app is free. And you're sitting there using this app going, this is the greatest thing on earth. I live in a time where I can get this thing on my phone that tells me all kinds of cool stuff, right? So I'll give you an example. There's an app that I know of that you can get that's radar, weather radar. So that in the old days, you could see radar on the news during the weather person segment. But now you can get an app on your phone and you call it up and it shows you radar that's within like 5 or 10 minutes fresh. And you can watch a radar weather map. It's the coolest thing ever on your phone. But of course, for the app to work, it's got to know where you are. So you have to enable the location for the app to work. Otherwise, how does the app know which weather to show you? Should it show you the weather in Nebraska or the weather in Bug Tussle, where you are? So now this app that knows where you are might be able to do something with that information. At the very least, they can show you targeted ads. So it's not uncommon that you're using an app that knows where you are and an ad pops up for something near you. That's the least intrusive of all the things. But if the app gets information from you, like where you actually go into the app and give it your name and email and other things like that, well, that information now is in their hands. And did you really read the permissions that you clicked on when you downloaded and installed that app? Or did you just see a thing pop up saying, to use this app, you must click below, and you scrolled past it and clicked below? Because that's what most people do. And, it's unfortunate, but companies do that on purpose. And there are some laws in some settings where they say for a disclosure to count, it's got to be done in the following manner. So you get the Truth in Lending Act, for instance. If you're going in to sign a retail loan on, say, an automobile purchase, there's a document that describes the loan with a bunch of boxes across the top that disclose to you everything you need to know. What's the purchase price of the car? What's the down payment on the car? How much are they lending you? What's your interest rate? What will you pay at the end of this if you pay all things on time? And so on. That's all these disclosures. Because they knew in the old days the disclosures weren't that clear and people would often sign something not realizing that when you pay 29% interest on something over 6 years, the interest that you're paying is quite large. And so there are apparently no laws governing most of this regarding the apps and the consent forms. And all you got to do is, if you ever bought a cell phone, okay, I'll give you the example that I'm familiar with because I have a cell phone. And when I'm at the store and I'm doing some transaction at the store, there's a little tiny thing where you slide your credit card and sign something, right? Well, they have on that thing their entire disclosure that they want you to approve to get your phone plan or whatever you're getting at the store that day. And they will print it out for you. And they print it out on one of those receipt paper thingies that goes 29 feet long, like a CVS receipt. And I remember on more than one occasion scrolling through parts of it and then just clicking OK, signing, and then hitting print, and you get this big long thing and all this crazy language on there. What does it say again? So if you get a vehicle that has the system in it where someone else can track that vehicle, because don't misunderstand me, your phone's tracking you also, we know that, but your vehicle tracking you. And you might say, well, I'm already being tracked by my phone. Yeah, but the point is that your vehicle's tracking you, and when you bought the vehicle, did you realize that it was not only tracking you, but it's creating information that was being sold to other companies like insurance companies, and they could also sell it, like for instance, to marketing companies. And you start getting junk mail, and you're looking at it going, how did they know this about me? Because they're sending out a piece of junk mail that appears to be targeted at somebody like me who's got this or has been here or whatever. And it's very, very intrusive. And I am a firm believer that we should own our own information. Or at the very least, if somebody goes to sell our information to a third party, they should be required to disclose that when they make the sale and disclose how much money they got. And I also think they should share it with you. Why are they selling information to third parties that they required me to give them to buy a product from them? Because I should be allowed to buy a car without the OnStar on it if I don't want the OnStar. And I can tell you that I once had a car with OnStar on it, and I bought the car and was driving along one day, and all of a sudden a voice came on. It said, "Hello, Steve, Mr. Lehto?" The car was talking to me. And I'm like, "Yeah?" And now I didn't think it was my cell phone, and I figured out very quickly it's the OnStar. And a woman introduced herself to me and said, "Yeah, I'm a rep for OnStar, and I noticed you haven't activated your OnStar yet." And I said, "No, I haven't. I was driving, by the way." And I got this intrusive conversation thrust upon me. And I remember how annoying I found that. And I only had that car for a little while. It was a short-term lease. Another story altogether. But the point simply is that I had it for a little while. This was a few years ago. But, if you got it now, there's a good chance they're tracking you, and they're selling the data, and it could affect your insurance rates. So Nebraska is on this. The question is, will other states jump on board also? Because once in a while, somebody follows one of these, and the other states go, "Hey, guess what? Obviously, what's happening in Nebraska, it's happening here." Only question is whether Nebraska has a specific law against it that other states don't have, or if other states have similar laws. Come on, guys, join the party, and let's see where this goes. So that's from thehill.com. James sent it. Thanks a lot. Will Day and Jeremy Tanner wrote it. Nebraska sues GM and OnStar over alleged sale of driver data recorded by Vehicle Tech. Questions or comments? Put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I'm not sure I can translate that.